First of all, thank you very much, Rupali. Thank you for inviting me for this. And this is already the fourth edition for you and the third time that I'm here at the Engaging India at Almedalen. And I've seen how the platform is growing, so many congratulations to you and your team. Coming to the question of why India and why at this stage, I think many of the things are related to the transformation that is going on in India at this stage, as you refer to a new India. India has now become the fifth largest economy in the world, and only 10 years back it was rated around 10th or 11th. So within a very short span of time, the Indian economy has really grown to become the fifth largest. This refers to the scale and the speed at which things are moving in India currently. It is estimated that in the next 5 years, almost 13 to 14% of the global economic growth will come from India. So all this means that there is a lot of stake for the international businesses in what is happening in India in terms of the opportunities that are available there. It's also related to the lot of diversification and de-risking of supply chains that is going on. So we see that much of the manufacturing interest now very growing rapidly in India. It perhaps is also not only limited to this, but the fact that any of the global challenges that we see, ranging from climate action to sustainability to pandemic to security, it's important to have India being an active player in that, which India is already. Also in terms of humanitarian action or development partnership, so India is stepping up to the game. If we saw recently in the pandemic, almost 250 million vaccines were made available, which were manufactured in India to almost 100 countries. So across the board, whether it is humanitarian action, whether it is climate action or development partnerships, India is emerging as a big player for positive action. And that, I think, explains the reason why there is so much interest in engaging with India. Sure. This is a very special year in many ways, as you referred to India's presidency of the G20. Sweden itself has held the EU presidency during the first half of this year. We have also interacted with Sweden in that context. We recently had the EU Indo-Pacific Ministerial, which was hosted by Sweden, where our External Affairs Minister had come, and he was the keynote speaker in that. India, in its G20 presidency, is bringing a lot of issues which are of concern to the global south to the table. So whether it is the debt crisis or the food, fuel or fertilizer prices, which are really increasing very rapidly. All these issues, India is not only consulting its G20 partners, but also the global south partners. So the agenda is such that it is of interest to the entire globe, whether it is resilient growth or the digital public infrastructure. So India is trying to address all these issues together. You mentioned the ISA and some of the other initiatives. India has been very actively engaged in many of these. In fact, the International Solar Alliance was a joint initiative by the leaders of India and France. And today it has more than 90 members in its coalition. They are working very actively to see how the financial solutions and the technological solutions can be more widespread. The per unit cost of solar energy has really come down, also contributed by this coalition. Then we have what is called the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, which that's another of India's initiative, where again the membership has grown quite significantly. And I must mention also the Leadership Group on Industry Transition, the LEAD IT, which is India-Sweden initiative, which was started in 2019. And now we see around 36 or 37 members. It includes both countries and large companies in sectors such as steel, cement, aviation, many of the so-called hard-to-abate sectors which have been there. So India is actively participating in many of these initiatives which are seeking solutions to the global challenges. So that's some of the aspects that India is involved with in terms of the global agenda. So the DPI and the whole digital revolution in India has been the very big story in the last few years. It has really transformed all the sectors. And the unique thing in this has been that where it differs from some of the models which have been adopted in the Western economies and other economies has been that this public infrastructure, in a way, the DPI, has been created by the government entities. It is free, it is open source, and it is considered as the public goods. So while it was being conceived, it was not being conceived in a manner which has been the case in some of the other contexts. So that is what it sets it apart. And the fact that it is free and open source means that not only these digital infrastructure is of use for e-governance to e-services, subsidies, direct benefit transfers at a popular level, at a public level, also providing many digital services to them directly, which helps in transparency, cuts corruption, and many of the it improves the efficiency very substantially. But it also provides for competition. So the private players are free to operate on this digital public infrastructure, which is in terms of the unique identity, digital identity, the documentation, certification, and the payments part. And they are building up various solutions to ranging from health to education to agriculture to, and now they are trying to see whether it can work for e-commerce and credit facilities for small and medium enterprises. So this is really an initiative where the government and the private sector have come together to offer solutions which are scalable, which really affect the common people. And because it is different from the other models, it does not allow monopolies, for example. It's not proprietary. I think it is of a lot of interest in many of the economies where this digital transformation has not taken place so far. So I understand that countries ranging from Brazil to Philippines to Ethiopia, Nigeria, all in some ways are looking at such models to see how these can be adopted. And in that way, having proven successful in a country the scale of India, I think this is of very large interest to many other countries. And for example, one of the aspects which relates to the digital payments, which is the UPI, in our case Unified Payment System, is now being also, it's interoperable. So countries like Singapore, UAE, France, they are also working with the Indian counterparts to adopt and to see whether it can work in their economies. So it really has implications much beyond our borders. Manufacturing is in very strong focus now in India. There are very deep reforms that have gone into this. There are government schemes, for example, one is called the PLI, the Production Linked Incentives. So very substantial push is being given by the government to support the manufacturing sectors in various across various sectors. And if we look at Sweden, Swedish companies have always been very actively engaged in manufacturing in India. Very long-standing tradition. Companies such as Ericsson or SKF, Alfa Laval, ABB, Atlas Copco, Sandvik, all have been manufacturing in India for a very long time. And in the last 2 or 3 years, we have seen further announcements of more manufacturing decisions that have been taken by the Swedish companies. We have seen that also, for example, in defense sector, there is further collaboration on manufacturing in India by Saab, for example. In fact, Sweden is considered the 5th largest when it comes to foreign countries, companies making in India. So there is a very strong tradition of Sweden making in India, and this is likely to intensify further. You also referred to R&D, and that's again a ecosystem that is growing in India now. There is much more emphasis on a triple helix system, for example, where the government, the academia and the private sector and the research institutions are working very closely together. Many of the Swedish companies, like many other foreign companies, have very strong R&D base in India. Companies like Volvo or Ericsson, some of their very, very large establishments of R&D and innovation are now based in India. So a lot of work is going on, and we hope that this will continue further and really is of a win-win situation for all sides. All these ideas basically refer to sustainability and how this whole extraction dependent process of let's say model of economy can be shifted to a system which is much more sustainable. So whether it is Lagom, which is really sort of avoiding extremes, or a circularity concept of or Shunya, which is really trying to see how the impact on the nature or environment is minimal, so that the human impact or the economical impact on our nature is minimal, are more or less addressing the similar sustainability issues. These are deep-rooted in both ethos of India and Sweden, and we see that Swedish companies are really pioneers in this in terms of modern industrial activity. We are now seeing Sweden taking the lead in, for example, producing green steel or green batteries, and many of the other technology-related solutions are emerging from Sweden. But many of these are also being co-produced in India, for instance, and that is where the scale is there, and the talent pool is there, and many of those solutions are sort of now have implications for both sides. So I think there is a very good match between the two countries and the businesses of the two countries to see how this can proceed. And here also there is a very big role to be played by not only the businesses themselves and the policymakers, but also the consumers. And we see here that in Sweden there is a premium attached by the consumers to sustainable products, and which is also now increasingly happening in India with the consumer base. So I think this can only grow, and this can only be very, very beneficial to all of us.